talk about the significance of the U.S. striking Syria and the other Arab countries supporting it, though it's not exactly clear what role they played.
Well, it's very significant that the United States has struck in Syria. Since August, there have been about 200 strikes in Iraq. But the United States had been reticent to come into the Syrian theater. So this is a very significant development. It's also significant that there was an announcement that there was a coalition of countries, largely Gulf Arab states, but also Jordan. And Jordan was the first one to admit publicly that they were involved in some way in these strikes. It's also, I think, important to recognize that these strikes don't really have any kind of international backing. There's no UN resolution, nor is there any congressional approval. On the other hand, it does seem as if there was some coordination with the Assad government in Damascus, not only because the government in Damascus very quickly released a statement saying that there was a message sent to their ambassador in New York City about these strikes, but also you might recall that General Martin Dempsey, when he appeared before Congress, had talked about what he called the formidable air defense systems of Syria. And the fact that no air defense system from Syria had engaged any of the American planes or drones is indicative that there was some kind of coordination. So this is a very significant development. The dust is not settled yet, so it's extremely hard to know what the impact is going to be in terms of the complicated politics on the ground.
And Vijay, you have contacts inside Syria. What are you hearing so far about the scale of these strikes?
Well, it's important to know that the first person to reveal the strikes was Abdul Qadir Hariri, who's a young activist inside Raqqa. He revealed the strikes half an hour before the United States had talked about them. And Abdul Qadir, from the beginning, has been saying that these strikes are of an unbelievable intensity. You know, you have to imagine that somebody who's lived in Raqqa over the course of the last 3 years, as it's been in the midst of this very bloody and difficult war, immediately knew that the scale of this attack was far greater than anything he had experienced previously. And within seconds, he knew that the nature of the bombing could not be from the Assad government, could not be a war between the rebel groups, but it certainly had to be an American bombing. That means the scale must have been quite intense. They also say that in Raqqa, the targets that were struck, for instance, the painted black building which ISIS had claimed as their headquarters, had all been emptied, and that most of the ISIS leadership has moved into residential areas. So that's one of the reasons why there was a very low death count in the major strikes on Raqqa. But a great deal of infrastructure in Raqqa city was destroyed, and also on Tabqa air base, which had been taken by ISIS just a month ago when they overran it and threw out the Syrian government forces.
And it's sad, Amy, that the day that the world should be coming together to say, how do we address the climate chaos that can really destroy our entire planet, instead the eyes will now be on the U.S. bombing campaign in Syria. And let's remember that the climate crisis the U.S. is so responsible for. So let's think about the timing of it. Also thinking about the timing is that the U.S. and the Obama administration is doing a George Bush. It's saying now we are coming together to say there's a fait accompli, and that's the bombing, and you are either with us or against us. Look at the coalition it brought together among the most repressive governments in the Middle East. Bahrain, that's been repressing its nonviolent democratic uprising. The Saudis, who provide the financing and the recruits for so many of the extremists. This is the diplomatic success of John Kerry. Instead of coming to the UN to say that we have the world coming together to stop the recruiting and the financing and the buying of the oil that ISIS has, we have the accomplishment of having repressive Arab regimes joining us in bombing another Arab state.
What are the links, Medea, you've seen between war and climate change?
Well, we have been talking during this weekend about how oil is the basis of U.S. policy in the Middle East. Were it not for Iraq's oil, the U.S. would have never invaded, would not be there to begin with. The military is the largest polluter. The oil companies are being protected by the U.S. military strength. We see the military-industrial oil complex all together in this. And I think it's so sad that when the world is crying out for solutions, both solutions to the climate crisis and nonviolent political solutions to the issue of extremists, what the Obama administration is giving us is a support for the oil monarchies, support for U.S. oil companies, and continued perpetual war.
Medea, what would be a nonviolent political solution to the issue of the Islamic State?
Well, the Obama administration is supposed to have been working for a binding resolution that we should be hearing about by the Security Council, talking about cutting off the funding, cutting off the equipping of these extremist groups. That's a positive thing. At the same time, the Obama administration has only given 1 week to the new government in Iraq to show that it is no longer a sectarian Shiite government that is suppressing Sunnis, but is actually going to be a government for all the people of Iraq. 1 week is certainly not enough to show that and to have the Sunnis peel away from ISIS. That takes time. There is no imminent threat to the United States right now. That is a lie. What the U.S. did is do this timing right at the time of the UN to have it be already an accomplished deal that they better get in with on us with this or not. So I think the political solutions have been put aside now for the military ones.
Medea, this Khorasan group and its leader, Muhsin al-Fadli, who the Times writes in a piece from Saturday saying, according to the State Department, was so close to bin Laden, he was among a small group of people who knew about the September 11, 2001 attacks before they were launched. They're saying the imminent threat is that they know that they're focused on the West and some kinds of explosives that they want to use, not clear suicide jackets or what it is that they're talking about. Do you see this as a pretext to sort of fulfill the requirement for, quote, imminent threat for an attack like this?
The U.S. has been searching for a justification for this attack. First, it was to protect U.S. personnel inside Iraq. Then it was humanitarian. And now it's an imminent threat of a new group that it was only Thursday that was being talked about. Our intelligence agencies have been saying that there is no imminent threat to the United States. So this is yet another justification. And indeed, if there is an imminent threat, the job of our government is to protect us here at home. By going overseas and bombing, we become more of a target of extremist groups.
Medea, you were organizing protest groups a year ago to pressure Congress to vote against the United States striking Syria. That's Bashar al-Assad's government. Now we hear that the U.S. government, at the very least, notified the Syrian government that they were going to attack in Syria, and clearly the Syrian government did not strike them even as they attacked. What about this shift of U.S. alliances right now?
Well, it is totally unclear, as Vijay was saying, what the U.S. is doing. There are some reports that by targeting Khorasan, the U.S. will actually be strengthening other extremist groups because they're fighting internally with each other. There is absolutely no end game to this. In fact, the end game we see is one like Libya, where it is a total failed state that is spreading extremism throughout the Middle East. So there is no well-thought-out policy here. There is only a military mindset that is counterproductive, will lead to more extremism, the U.S. becoming more of a target. It's totally wrong. And your audience, Amy, people who care about the future of this planet should be getting out on the streets, calling their congresspeople, saying this was never discussed in the United States. There was never a vote by Congress to go to war. This is against the international law. You can't bomb another country country without a justification for it, which hasn't been given. And so we have to get out and oppose this.